Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're tackling something I think we all struggle with, right? I mean, who hasn't fallen victim to procrastination at some point?
Oh, yeah, it's definitely a universal experience.
I know I have.
Yeah.
You know that feeling when you should be working on that big project,
Yeah.
but suddenly reorganizing your sock drawer seems like a much better use of time?
Uh-huh. I can relate.
We're going to break down this whole procrastination thing today, and I have to admit, in getting ready for this, I was kind of surprised to learn it's not just a matter of being lazy like I always thought.
Yeah, it's much more nuanced than that.
That's right. We're actually diving into an excerpt all about it, and let me tell you, it's got some pretty fascinating insights.
It really does. Procrastination is much more complex than just a lack of willpower or laziness. It's a tangled web of emotions, motivations, even our brain chemistry plays a role.
Oh, brain chemistry, huh? So it's like a scientific thing.
Yeah. In a way, yeah. Essentially, it's this disconnect between what we intend to do and what we actually do. We often put things off to avoid discomfort, whether it's boredom, anxiety, or that dreaded fear of failing.
Wow, so it's like self-sabotage almost.
Well, not always intentionally, but it can definitely feel that way sometimes.
Okay, that makes sense. I always thought I was just being lazy, but now I feel a little less guilty about it. Haha.
Mm.
But speaking of guilt, one thing I learned about procrastination that really blew my mind is that there are different types. Types of procrastination, who knew?
Right. It's not just one big monster under the bed. Understanding those different types can really help us figure out how to deal with it. Like, there's passive procrastination.
Passive, what's that all about?
Well, you know that feeling when you're just stuck? Like you have a million things you could be doing, but you can't decide where to start and end up just doing nothing.
Oh yeah, totally. Like when you spend an hour scrolling through Netflix trying to figure out what to watch instead of actually watching anything.
Exactly. That's a classic example of passive procrastination. It often comes from a lack of clear priorities or, like we talked about, that underlying anxiety about making the wrong choice.
Okay, I see. So then what's the other type?
While on the flip side, there's what's called active procrastination.
Active procrastination. So you're actively procrastinating. That sounds kind of counterintuitive.
I know, right? But think of those people who seem to work best under pressure. The ones pulling all-nighters to hit a deadline.
Oh yeah, I have a friend who swears by that.
Right.
He says he does his best work under pressure.
Yeah.
Is he just tricking himself, or can active procrastination actually be a good thing?
That's a tricky one. Some people genuinely might perform better with the deadline looming, but honestly, I think active procrastination is kind of a risky game to play. You're more likely to end up stressed, exhausted, and the quality of your work might suffer too. Is that adrenaline rush really worth it in the long run?
Yeah, good point. I guess it's not really a sustainable way to work. So, okay, we've got these different types of procrastination. But what's at the root of it all? Why do we do this to ourselves in the first place?
The reasons are just as varied as the procrastinators themselves. For some people, it boils down to a lack of clear goals.
Yeah, I could see that.
They get overwhelmed with a mountain of tasks and just don't know where to start.
Right, like having a to-do list a mile long, but no idea which item to tackle first.
Exactly, that feeling of being totally swamped. Then for others, it's perfectionism, that fear of not measuring up, of
Yeah.
not doing something perfectly, so they just avoid it altogether.
Oof, I've been there. I can be such a perfectionist sometimes, it's ridiculous.
Tell me about it. I think we've all been there.
It's like I get so caught up in making things perfect that I actually end up getting nothing done.
I know, right? It's totally counterproductive. I remember one time I was working on a short story for a writing competition.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. How'd that go?
Well, I kept tweaking it and editing it over and over. I was so focused on making it perfect that I missed the submission deadline.
Oh, no. That's the thing about perfectionism, right? It can really hold us back. One tip that I found helpful for dealing with perfectionism is to shift your focus from perfect to progress.
That's interesting. From perfect to progress.
Yeah, it's a subtle change, but it can make a big difference. Instead of aiming for perfection, just try to make a little bit of progress each day. Remember, done is often better than perfect, especially when it comes to actually accomplishing your goals.
That's really good advice. I'm definitely going to try that. But let's be honest, sometimes it's not even perfectionism, it's just that. Well, some things are more fun than others. Like who wants to do taxes when you could be binge watching your favorite show, right?
Oh, I hear you. Instant gratification is a powerful force. Our brains are wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And in today's world, We're surrounded by these quick hits of dopamine,
Yeah.
social media, games, streaming services. It's harder than ever to resist those instant rewards.
It's like a constant battle for our attention spans. Okay, so we've talked about the different types of procrastination, the reasons behind it. But how do we actually fight back?
Mm.
What are some tools we can use to break free from the procrastination trap?
Well, the good news is there are a lot of effective strategies out there, and a lot of it comes down to addressing those underlying causes we talked about. For example, if you struggle with feeling overwhelmed, breaking tasks down into smaller, more manageable steps can be a game changer.
Smaller steps, huh? I've heard that one before. But honestly, how did that really help?
Well, instead of staring down a huge EE project and feeling paralyzed, focus on just one small part of it. Like,
Yeah.
instead of trying to write an entire book, just write the first paragraph. Or instead of trying to clean your whole house, start with one room.
Okay, I see. It's like, don't focus on the whole forest, just focus on one tree.
Exactly. Break it down and make it feel less daunting. And another powerful tool is something called the 5-minute rule.
5-minute rule. Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
It's simple, really. Just commit to working on something for just 5 minutes. That's it. You'll be amazed how often that initial hurdle, that getting started part, is the hardest. Once you actually get going, you're more likely to keep going.
5 minutes. Yeah, that's totally doable. Even I can manage that, huh?
Exactly. It's all about tricking your brain a little. And speaking of tricking your brain, what about those of us who kind of thrive under pressure? Any tips for dealing with that deadline-driven procrastination?
Yeah, any advice for my friend who loves those all-nighters? Is there a way to harness that energy without burning out?
Definitely. Setting deadlines, even for yourself, can be a huge help. Use a calendar, set reminders on your phone, or even find an accountability partner, someone who'll check in on your progress. And of course, minimizing distractions is crucial. Put your phone in another room, silence those notifications, maybe even use a website blocker if you need to.
Ugh, yes. My phone is my biggest weakness. That website blocker idea is a good one. I need to look into that. But sometimes, even when I manage to avoid distractions, I still struggle with focus. I'll sit down to work on something and then suddenly I'm like, ooh, what's new on Instagram?
Hmm.
Have you got any tips for staying focused?
Absolutely. Have you ever heard of the Pomodoro technique?
Pomodoro, like the tomato.
Haha, yep. It's named after those tomato-shaped kitchen timers. Basically, you work in focused intervals, usually 25 minutes, followed by a short break.
Okay, 25 minutes on, then a break. I can see how that would help.
Yeah, it's a great way to break down your work into manageable chunks and prevent burnout. Plus, those little breaks give your brain a chance to reset so you come back to your task feeling refreshed.
Okay, I like it. I am definitely adding the Pomodoro technique to my list of procrastination busting tools.
Awesome. And remember, it's all about finding what works for you. Experiment, try different strategies, and see what helps you stay on track.
So it seems like the key is to understand our own personal procrastination style, find the right strategies, and not beat ourselves up when we slip up, right? It's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly. We're all human. We all procrastinate sometimes. It's not about eliminating it completely, but about managing it so it doesn't control our lives.
Well said. So one last thought for our listeners today. Instead of getting discouraged by procrastination, try to understand it. Figure out what triggers it for you, find the strategies that work best for your procrastination style, and don't forget to celebrate those small victories along the way. What's one tiny step you can take today to break free from that procrastination cycle?